There is a strange moment that happens before almost every major transformation. Nobody else can see it. No announcement, no dramatic soundtrack. You simply wake up one morning and realize, I don't negotiate with myself the way I used to. You go to the gym without having a motivational conversation with yourself. You open the laptop instead of opening another distraction. You make the difficult call, you say no. You finish what you started, and suddenly something has changed. Not your circumstances, your default settings. That is where the real psychology of success begins. Most people think achieving a goal is about wanting something badly enough. I don't think it is. Wanting is cheap. Your brain can want a million things, while your behavior quietly votes for something completely different. You can say you want financial freedom while spending every evening escaping into your phone. You can say you want to become an artist while waiting for permission to be imperfect. You can say you want a different life while protecting the habits that created your current one. So the question isn't how badly do I want this? The better question is, what does my brain currently believe is normal? Because your brain is an extraordinary prediction machine. It constantly tries to predict what happens next. And it uses yesterday to make those predictions. If yesterday you avoided difficult conversation, tomorrow avoidance feels familiar. If yesterday you quit when things became uncomfortable, quitting becomes an available option. But if yesterday you kept the promise you made to yourself, even when nobody was watching, tomorrow keeping that promise becomes a little less foreign. This is why tiny actions can become psychologically enormous. You're not just doing the thing, you're teaching your brain what kind of person does the thing. That distinction changes everything. Imagine you decide to write for 20 minutes every morning. The first morning it feels like discipline. The 10th morning it feels like routine. Months later, strange things happen. You don't wake up thinking, should I be a writer today? You just write. The behavior stopped being a debate. And that is one of the most underrated forms of power, when the right behavior becomes boringly automatic. We often romanticize motivation. We imagine successful people waking up inspired, drinking coffee, looking at their vision board, and feeling unstoppable. Reality is less much cinematic. Some of the most important moments in your life will happen when you feel absolutely nothing. No inspiration, no confidence, no sign from the universe. Just a Tuesday, and you do the work anyway. That's where identity gets built, because every time you act despite your emotional state, you're teaching yourself, my feelings are allowed to exist, they just don't get to drive. That is freedom. But here is where it gets interesting. Your subconscious isn't something you can simply command, make me successful. It doesn't work like that. You can repeatedly whisper, I'm a millionaire, while behaving in ways that constantly contradict the belief and expect your brain to ignore the evidence. Your deeper mind pays attention to patterns. It watches what you repeatedly do. It learns from what you repeatedly experience. It notices what you repeatedly tolerate. So if you want a new identity, give yourself new evidence. Don't spend 6 months trying to convince yourself that you're disciplined. Become the person who keeps one promise every day. Don't spend years trying to convince yourself you're confident. Do uncomfortable things until your nervous system discovers, interesting, we survived. Don't tell yourself you're fearless. Collect evidence that fear doesn't control your behavior. That is a much more grounded kind of self-belief. And there is another uncomfortable truth. Your brain is designed to protect the familiar, not necessarily to create the extraordinary. The familiar can be terrible and still feel safe. You can know a habit is destroying your potential and still feel strangely uncomfortable when you're trying to leave it. Why? Because familiar doesn't mean good. It means predictable, and the brain loves predictable. That's why transformation can feel wrong before it feels right. The first time you wake up early, it feels wrong. The first time you start replying to everyone, immediately it feels wrong. The first time you charge what your work is actually worth, it feels wrong. The first time you walk away from something that keeps hurting you, it can feel wrong. Not because you've made the wrong decision. Sometimes it feels wrong because we've interrupted a pattern. And interruption creates friction. Stay with it long enough, and the new pattern starts becoming familiar. This is where people often quit. They mistake unfamiliarity for warning. But sometimes unfamiliarity is simply the price of becoming someone you've never been before. Think about that. Of course, the new version of you feels uncomfortable. You've never been that person before. Your brain has no history of them. So don't demand that transformation feels natural immediately. Let it feel awkward, let it feel clumsy. Let yourself be terrible at the beginning. The goal isn't to look like the person you want to become. The goal is to repeatedly behave like them until it stops feeling like acting. And this is where goals themselves become fascinating. A goal is useful, but a goal alone is fragile. I want financial freedom. I want to become successful. Fine. But who do you have to become for those outcomes to become probable? That's the question. Because you don't rise to the level of your wishes. You repeatedly return to the level of your systems, habits, skills, environment, and identity. So instead of obsessing over the finish line, build the machine that moves toward it. Want to write a book? Become someone who writes. Even when the chapter isn't brilliant. Want to change your life? Become someone who can tolerate the temporary discomfort required to create a permanent difference. You don't need every attempt to work. You need every attempt to teach you something. You don't need to win every day. You need to become someone who returns the next day. That's resilience. And resilience is far more useful than motivation. You quietly became the person who could no longer live like the old you. And that is where a goal stops being a distant dream. It becomes the direction your entire life naturally moves in. Be kind, be patient, lift someone up when you can. You never know who is fighting a battle you can see. Subscribe and stay with us. If this message spoke to you,